Welcome to the PAO podcast, a forum for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. A place to grow and develop your public information skills. I am your host, Robert Tornaveni. I have over 11 years of experience as a PIO and 27 years as a law enforcement officer. I am proud to announce that we have partnered with the PIO Toolkit to expand and grow the podcast. Thank you to Christine Townsend and Law Publications for this amazing opportunity. To contact the show, email robert@piotoolkit.com. We need your feedback on how we're doing. Please rate us on whatever platform you listen or send us a review via email. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episodes. Thank you for listening. Sit back and enjoy the next episode. Good morning. Today on the PIO podcast, we have Public Affairs Specialist Brian Lamar. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, Robert. I'm really happy to be on here. I've watched
this podcast
a few of these now,
and
I've become a huge
really
fan. So
grown.
I'm
It was
planning to tear through them
for
all.
transition from while I was looking for a job, but now it's just second nature that I just want to deliver the best product I can.
Yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that because I feel like our career field, communicating to audiences, things like that on behalf of whether it's corporate entity, a state or local or federal government entity. There's so much that can be done for the greater good through just simple, efficient, and streamlined communication. So not too long ago, I was thinking about starting a newsletter, just highlighting those different types of careers in the public information, public affairs kind of realm, marketing realm as well, and just highlight people who do different jobs and things. And then I came across your podcast.
So let me
thought,
tell you
cool.
a little
So I started,
roundabout way
checking into it, and then there you go. Now I'm on it.
Jumped off because
funny how that worked.
I met Christine Townsend, who is the CEO of PIO Toolkit. And I met her years before she was actually doing that. It was under a different kind of name of the company. She when she founded PIO Toolkit, we reconnected, and she has been a resource and an asset in promoting the podcast. So it's amazing how these connections that you make with people really push you forward when you don't expect it. So Brian, in your career, you handled a lot of different duties and responsibilities, from manning crisis communications, equipment in an emergency operations center, coordinating special events and ceremonies, collaborating with outside stakeholders, and you've won several awards. So let's talk about your background and what you've done. Oh, let me ask this. As a PAO, did you have a journalism background?
So, all right. So yeah, let me go back to like how I got into this in the first place, because it was all right. So high school, right? Now we're talking 20 something years ago. High school, I got approached by my 12th grade English teacher. He tells me, "Hey, Brian, whatever you do after graduation, it looks like you're going to graduate by the skin of your teeth. Whatever you're going to do after you graduate, be sure that it's in a foreign country, because English ain't your thing." And so I kind of looked at him. I was like, "Oh, is he being serious?" But so anyways, yeah, I struggled in school in a lot of ways. So if you gave me a paper to write, I would get 100. I'd get 100 plus. I'd get bonus points for research and all that stuff like that every time. But if you just sat me down, hey, take this test. I'm talking rote memorization and things like that. Just take this test. I would do horribly on it. And it wasn't because I get like test anxiety or anything. Most people just thought it was apathy or lack of motivation. It was just, I don't know. That's just not how I'm wired. I just didn't get it. And so as I got through high school, weaved and bobbed my way through high school, I decided, okay, well, pretty much my teachers have told me, I don't know what you're going to do when you get out of high school. You retread tires or rob banks. I don't know what you're going to do, but it ain't going to be anything intellectual. And I kind of took that to heart. So like a lot of those careers where you would think, my friends were like, I'm going to go be an engineer. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go be in finance and banking and real estate and all that stuff. I just really kind of counted myself out. I was going to go work at McDonald's as far as I knew, just because that's all I thought that I was capable of. And so I decided one day, let me try the Army. They got lots of jobs. They'll train me, and they'll kind of beat it into me if I don't, if I don't study hard. So I get to the recruiting station. I take the ASVAB, and I scored really high on it. And unbeknownst to me, they said, well, you qualify for almost everything we got in the Army. And I said, okay, well, send me up to the MEP station. And for folks that don't know the military system, MEPS is the military entrance processing station. And so I go up to Nashville because I was in North Alabama at the time. I go up to Nashville and sit down with the guidance counselor guy, the career counselor, and he's wanting me to sign on the bottom line. He just wants to get me in, get my warm butt in the seat, right? So he says, here's what you qualify for, and this is what we've got openings for. And I'm looking down the list, and I had seen that there was a job called chaplain's assistant, and I thought, not because I was overly religious, I went to church, but I wasn't overly religious. It wasn't part of my what made me, like a fiber of what made me as a being. But I thought, yeah, I can do that, and it just seemed like chaplain's assistant would have been such an easy job. I mean, and I don't mean to disparage chaplain's assistants at all. That's not what I'm trying to do, because I've met a few, and there's some very talented, motivated, creative, intellectual people in that career field. But I was thinking, all I got to do is kind of just assist the chaplain, just do what he tells me to do, and it can't be that hard. And so I was in Nashville, and I was trying so hard to find that in the list of jobs that were open. And I went to the guy and I said, hey, I want to be a chaplain's assistant. He goes, well, we don't need any chaplain's assistants. We got all the chaplain's assistants we need. And I said, well, I want to be one. And he said, no, we got it. And so he sent me back with this little list to go look down, and I had to pick out 3 from that list. And he said, whatever 3 you pick out, he's going to pop in a VHS tape, and I could watch a little promotional video about what that job does. So I wasn't interested in watching the videos either. I'd already been there for, over 24 hours, up in Nashville, away from mom and dad and everything. And I was kind of over it. And I was thinking, let me just get back home. And so I saw public affairs on this list of jobs. And I said, what is this? He goes, wow, that's a pretty fun career field from what the video shows. And I've talked to a couple of people that went into that career field, and they send you off to journalism school. You learn public relations type stuff. You learn journalism, photography, and my parents did not necessarily. My dad did not necessarily want me to join the Army. He was a right at the end of Vietnam, post-Vietnam War veteran. You didn't really get treated nice when you were in the Army in those days. It wasn't a fun time. There was lots of morality issues within the Army at that time, stuff like that, and he experienced those and partook in some of those. But so I'm sure, and so I don't think he wanted that for me, and so I had snuck off to MEPS. By the way, I didn't tell you that at the beginning. I had snuck off, and so I saw that when he said photography and videography and stuff. I thought, my dad's always kind of pushing me that direction, so I thought, yeah, let me sign up for that, and at least he'll be all right with it. At least it's something that kind of sounds fun for me, something I might be able to do when I get out of the Army. And my dad's not going to kill me for doing it. Because if I'd have signed up for infantry or artillery or something like that, something like he did, he was a combat engineer. He was like, you don't want to do that. You want to get a job where you can do something when you get out. So anyways, that's what I did. I picked it. And then delayed entry program at the time was 1998. Got whisked off to Fort Jackson for basic training, and then Fort Meade, Maryland for the Department of Defense Information School. And yeah, it was just like I expected, another school. And I did struggle through it. Luckily, I created a little bit of a team that, we stuck together, and at the end of school, instead of going out and partying with some of the other troops or going out and just being, just knuckleheads, we would go and sit in a room, and we would write stories and work on each other's stuff and help each other like memorize. It's called the Associated Press Style Guide is what we have to go out, as far as journalists have to go off of. And we would just help each other. And that was great. And I got through it. And then I got sent to my first duty assignment. And I was a cub reporter at the Back to Fort Jackson for the Fort Jackson Leader newspaper, and worked my way up to eventually being the editor of that paper, winning some awards. And then right about the time that I was ready to rotate out of there, 9/11 happened. And that changed my whole trajectory, my whole life. Because I was going to do like 4 years and call it quits, go be a journalist somewhere, because I kind of found out that I enjoyed it. And then I got whisked off to Afghanistan and Iraq and Djibouti and a couple of other places doing public affairs, dealing with the world's media. And I never looked back from not getting the job as a chaplain's assistant to now I'm the public affairs officer for the Naval Construction Battalion Center. I never did look back. So I just gave you a very long-winded answer to a short question.
That's okay. No, that's fine, because it's interesting how there are career people that come in from the journalism career into public affairs and public information, and then there are those that have no public information or journalism background whatsoever, and then they excel into the field over time. And it's an interesting mix of our field, and it really is. So Brian, let's talk about your job at the Naval Construction Battalion Center. What are your duties and responsibilities there?
Yeah, it's broken down into just a few categories. For the public affairs side, the media relations is probably our most robust program out of the three. So I'm going to break it down just to the three major ones: media relations, community relations, and then command information, or some people call it internal information. In some corporations, corporate style communications, they'll call it, instead of internal communications, I think they call it employee relations or employee communications, and some other stuff like that. So those three categories, and I'll start with media relations. A lot of public affairs offices, especially with the federal entities, military bases and other entities, they'll be more of a reactive stance with public affairs, with media relations and outreach. My approach and my stance with that has always been a very proactive stance. So a lot of people ask me a lot of times, how do you get so much media attention to your tiny little base in Gulfport, Mississippi? And rightfully so. It's a good question, because there are entities in my local area that they've got so much more dynamic missions and so much larger missions, and they don't get a fifth of the media attention that I get. And it's because on a daily basis, I'm looking at the stories to tell, and I don't just try to write a story internally and tell it internally. I call up our local news affiliates. We've got WXXV and WLOX in our area, and I'll call them up. And it's not news. I'm calling them up for their 4 o'clock show. I'm calling them up for their noon show, and I'm telling them, hey, I've got these personnel that are in my area. That maybe they're new people on the scene, or they've done something innovative recently, and I tell them, okay, would you want them on your morning show? Would you want them on your 4 o'clock kind of variety hour? Or, how does that go? And I've got a couple radio shows that are like that too, more talk radio centric. And I'm always reaching out to them and keeping that relationship alive. And then now they know, not only that am I going to reach out to them when I have something, but they'll call me up frantic sometimes and say, hey, do you have anybody that can fill in like this 10-minute block that we've got on our 4 o'clock show to tell us about some aspect of behind the fence line kind of thing? So if I'm not doing that on a regular basis, it's only because I'm either on vacation or I'm out somewhere else. So that's the media relations and outreach side of life. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
My son's having a sleepover, and his parents are coming to get him, and my dog sees him at the front door. Yeah, that always happens.
Don't worry about that. Hey, don't worry about that. I've got a crazy dog too, so that's not a problem.
Yeah. But anyways, the second part is community relations and outreach. The second part of my job is is the way that I keep the kind of like the heartbeat of the of the base and the community, to get that pulse reading of what they all are, as far as like who are the interested parties around me, that are interested in the military side of life, who are the people who are kind of adversarial. We don't have a whole lot down here, thank God, but we've got a lot of civic organizations like Civitans and Kiwanis clubs and Lions clubs and Rotary clubs, just to name a few, that love to have us engage with them. So I'll send people to go speak to them, subject matter experts about all kinds of things, to go speak to them. And I'll also have people go and work on like community relations events, where like volunteerism events and things like that. So then the next thing is the internal. Well, also we do tours as well, and I almost forgot about saying that, because COVID has really torn up our tour program. We used to have Boy Scouts come on and do flag folding programs with us. And we used to have just so much business communities like a Chamber of Commerce and stuff like that come on the base and just do like these events with us, where they'd either participate in a training event or a field exercise or something like that. We don't have that anymore, and that's slowly starting to get back into the fold, because we got to do a Boy Scout flag folding ceremony the other day, where it's like we've turned it into a little bit of a show. It's nice, but that's all starting to turn back on. And then the last part is internal information, where we write stories about the people that are all around our base, different cool jobs that we have around our base.
So you're looking for, with that, you're looking for the stories of military personnel that are on base that have something interesting in their background or in their job experience, or that you can use that to connect to the greater community.
Yeah, so I'll tell the stories on base, and we'll share it around. We call it refrigerator news, where it's the kind of news where it's not necessarily hard news, right? But it's the kind of news that they'll put up on the front of their refrigerator, or they'll share it on Facebook or whatever. Mom and dad can be proud of it, or sister or brother or something like that. And we'll share it with like the hometown news release program, which is kind of an archaic system, but we'll share that as well. That's all great stuff internally, but we'll take our internal program, and then we'll use that internal program to expand that story to the media as well. We'll send it to the media, and we'll I'll take those internal stories, and I'll tell them they'll start getting shared a bunch. Internally and then externally through social media and all that stuff. And then the local media, a lot of times will pick them up, or a lot of times that's how the local media, when I say, hey, I got this female employee of ours who just got picked up for Master Chief, and she's just an amazing personality on our base. This is how I get that word out to the media. A lot of times they'll either follow our page and they'll see it, or I'll tell them about it, and then they'll say, okay, well, give us a little background info, and I've already got the story, so I'll just send it to them, and they see it and they go, okay, well, we've got all the background information we want. We definitely want to talk to that person, and they love that.
Awesome. All right, so let's I'm going to jump ahead here. Let's talk about your beliefs as a public affairs officer. What do you consider most important in getting information out to the public?
The most important aspect is I've got a mantra. I don't know if it's a mantra or whatever. I just got this philosophy when I come into public affairs. In the first year of me being in a new public affairs role, my goal is to walk into a room, either on base or downtown, in any kind of platform, whether it's with our like emergency management folks, the community folks, or on base as well, and walk into that room and nobody has to introduce me. That's one of the main things that I try to accomplish, because that means that I can. It's like a anecdotal metric. I can know by that if people are just coming up to me and saying, "Oh, hey, Brian, good to see you again." without me having to say, "Hi, I'm Brian," or somebody tell, "Hey, that's Brian Lamar. He's the PAO for the Gulfport." Then I know that my outreach has worked. And it's very anecdotal and it's not scientific whatsoever as a metric. But I know at that point, okay, these people know who I am, whether they like me or not, that's a different story. But they know who I am and what I do and how to engage with me and how to get a hold of the base in a way, whatever. And so if I can accomplish that everywhere I go, and typically in the federal government, we move around quite often, but if I can do that each time I go somewhere, then I know that I have accomplished that goal with being able to I don't know, community relations and media relations to make sure that that's working at full speed.
Excellent. All right, so let's talk about your overseas experience. You after 9/11, you ended up going overseas, and that kind of changed things for you. What did you find most rewarding about your time overseas?
A fun story is I haven't even thought about this in a while actually, but a fun story is one time I was in Afghanistan, and we ran the media operations cell for all of ISAF, which at the time was all of the quadrants or commands of Afghanistan. It was the region capital, north, south, east, and west. And I could run this weekly press conference with the world's, like the international media. At the time, we had reps with BBC and Canadian news broadcasts and all the American media, Al Jazeera, all of them from all over the world, even Russian media, all that stuff. They're all interested at this time. I think this was 2006. At this time, they're very interested in Afghanistan because we had just expanded our control all across the country. And a very dynamic time in Afghanistan, or US's history in Afghanistan. And so I remember one time I never was able to really explain to my parents what I did. Like I'd start telling them, and they're just like a lot of times people's eyes just kind of glaze over and they go So and so I never was able to really kind of convey to my parents like the fun job that I had. And one night it was daytime in Afghanistan, nighttime over there in Alabama where my parents were. And I called my mom and said, hey, check the news around, like, I don't know, 10 o'clock tonight. Turn it on to like CNN or Fox News, whichever one, just turn it on. And you're going to see stories about blank, blank, blank. I don't even remember what the stories were now. And I said, or go on the internet and just kind of pull up AP or Reuters and look for headlines about blank, blank, blank. And she goes, okay. And she did. And then I got an email from her later. Goes, how did you know that was all going to be on the news? I said, because I put it on the news. I fed this story to Reuters and Associated Press and all of these journalists that are in our media pool down here. I gave that story to them. And so I felt like I was, I don't know, helping affect what the international community saw as far as like the Afghanistan. I kept it relevant. I kept it fresh, and I kept people motivated into wanting to know more about what's going on in Afghanistan, which affected us in a lot of ways.
As a PIO, how close are you how close are you to the command staff? And is this different than in a public sector PIO's position?
So I'll look at the Gulfport, Mississippi PIO, which is our host city. Their PIO is jointed at the hip with the mayor and the city administrative officer. And that PIO is very important to getting the message out of that city. On the base side, and I'm just making a comparison here. On the base side, I'm kind of in the same role. In most commands that I've been a part of as the PAO, I'm in the commanding officer's office, maybe daily, just going over, hey, what are our objectives for the day? What kind of messages are we pushing? Is there any kind of change in that platform or anything like that? Is there something else that we need to be pushed out? Are there strengths or weaknesses or opportunities, threats? The whole SWOT analysis kind of thing. Just kind of doing it mentally with the CO. My current command that I have, they're engineers, so it's a different kind of folks that I'm dealing with. They're a lot more hands off. So I do a lot of public affairs work autonomously. but I don't necessarily have that closeness that I typically do. I've been doing this for 24 years. This is the first command that I haven't had that, but it's more personality driven. But luckily they still give me the autonomy to do my job. They go, all right, well, you know what you're doing. But at the same time, I feel like there's like no safety net under me. I was like, oh, it's all on me.
Now, how do you protect yourself if you don't have the approval of the boss?
Yeah. So there's been a couple of times where I've pushed a story out or something, and the boss came back and said, "Why'd you push that out?" I'm like, "Well, you never told me not to." So and in a way, he goes, "Oh yeah, okay, you're right." So, but it's never been anything negative. It's just there's been a couple of times I've got a course correction. It's like, why'd you focus on that instead of that? And I had an answer, I had a reason, but without having that day-to-day conversation with the boss, there's been a couple of small frictions, but it works. I love that autonomy.
Awesome. What kind of training have you had as a PAO?
So so the initial, what I told you, the Department of Defense information training, it's a lot of journalism training, a lot of photography type training, things like that. Then you go to your first couple assignments, and it's you're supposed to get assigned to a non-commissioned officer that's worth their salt. I had a couple of great mentors early on that kind of showed me the ropes, not just journalistically and photography wise, but also like just community relations and media relations wise. I got to follow in the footsteps of some great PAOs. And so there's a lot of OJT that goes on, and more like not just like a haphazard kind of OJT, but a very formal way that we do these trainings. But then I throughout my career, I've gotten sent to different types of trainings. I got sent to a FEMA PIO courses.
Good course.
Those courses, the basic course and the intermediate course, and then also I've gotten to go to some kind of specialized. I got to go to at the Alabama Fire College, the fire PIO course. That was kind of fun. It was a very different aspect. And then of course, we got other PAOs. We can do a little bit of like a transfer exchange where we'll go visit another PAO shop in our region and get a chance to learn a little bit from them as well.
Excellent. How can someone who is interested in becoming a PAO get into it?
First and foremost, if you're in school in a journalism or mass communications career field, that's a good way to get into like a public affairs internship program. If you just Google, like, the Army Public Affairs internship program is very robust and it's very worthwhile. If you're just doing like a mass communications degree plan, take some journalism courses. You're going to need them, and it's going to be looked at a lot more favorably because there's a lot of mass communications programs that you don't take hardly any journalism courses. There's a lot of like public relations theory and stuff, and that's great for an education, but practicality wise, you want some more like rubber meets the road kind of journalism.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right, Brian, we're going to go into rapid fire questions. You ready?
Okay. All right.
Favorite musician, act, or style?
I would have to say like Foo Fighters, but I love Cowboy Mouth as well. So it's very rock and roll.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Chocolate or vanilla?
For custard, ice cream, all that stuff, vanilla. But if it's not cold based, it's chocolate.
Okay. What's a must-read book in your mind?
Sapiens. If you haven't read Sapiens, read Sapiens. It really has a lot in there for everybody.
If you could have coffee with anyone living or deceased, who would it be and why?
Living for sure. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So I've got so many there, but honestly, Martin Luther King Jr. would be pretty amazing to talk to find out what he thinks about race relations in the United States right now.
Oh, interesting. Favorite drink of choice?
I'm a coffeeholic. Caffeine all the way.
I don't know any PAO that's not. What would be your superpower if you could get one?
Is time travel considered a superpower?
It can be.
Then I'd do that.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe go erase 9/11. Maybe, I don't know.
That would be that'd be interesting. But then you got to think of the consequences of changing the time. Yeah, the quandary of that. Yeah. All right. So, what's the biggest takeaway, Brian, that you can give our listeners today?
The biggest takeaway: if you are unsure about where to go in life, career-wise, things like that, public affairs is a place where you can get into, and you don't have to stay public affairs your whole career because it translates into so many other aspects, business and otherwise. So take that journalism class, write that paper, just get out there and don't be afraid to go join some civic clubs like Rotary or Civitans and get up and speak as often as possible in front of a captive audience. Learn how to communicate to people, and you'll never be poor. Well, maybe not poor, but you'll never be unemployed. How about that?
There you go. Okay,
Yeah.
Brian, how can people best reach out to you and to connect?
I'm on LinkedIn, Brian Lamar as well. I'm also on Facebook, Brian Lamar. There's not a whole lot of Brian Lamars out there, but LinkedIn and Facebook's the best way. But also my email address is brian.lamar. It's BRIAN.LAMAR 1453 @gmail. That's one I check all the time.
And I will add all that into the show notes.
Cool.
Brian, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. And if anybody out there, seriously, if you're even thinking about possibly being a PAO, give me an email and I'll answer all your questions.
Thank you, Brian. Take care.
You too. Thanks, Robert.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.